Because ultimately, like any president, when this happens on your watch, then every day you are thinking, how does this get solved?
Upset he may be, but he said those words at a California fundraiser for Barbara Boxer. Perhaps that's why his travel plans have changed to take him to the coast.
And upset he may be, the oil is still gushing into the Gulf. More than a month into this, Top Line begins right now.
Hello and welcome to ABC News Washington Post Top Line. I'm David Chalian.
And I'm Jonathan Karl.
Each weekday we're bringing you the very latest political headlines, reporting, insight, analysis, everything you need and want to know about politics. Sir, get us started. What is your top line on this day?
Well, it's top kill. Now BP call it Plan G, call it Plan H. I'm not sure where we're now, but the latest plan to stop that oil from coming into the Gulf Coast is coming today. It's this effort by BP to do what they're calling a top kill. The president, the CEO of BP, is saying he only gives it about a 60 to 70% chance of working. And significantly, David, they are going to turn off, we understand, the underwater video camera, so we will not be able to watch as this is going on.
Some experts are saying even if we were be able to watch, we may not be able to tell if it was successful or not right away. But my God, you are right. I think it is Plan G or H. I mean, this has just been unbelievable. And no matter how angry the president gets here, this is still something that's going to remain at the very top of his agenda. Border Patrol, that's our second top line today. The president is ordering 1,200 members of the National Guard to the border in Arizona. This is, I think, largely political cover here, in addition to the 1,200 to the border, which a lot of border state governors don't think will be nearly enough. He says an additional $500 million will be appropriated for this Border Patrol effort, John. But to me, hearing this announcement leak out of the White House is a clear indication of the political reality that comprehensive immigration reform is going nowhere fast.
Actually, and look where it leaked out of. It was actually Gabrielle Giffords, Congresswoman from Arizona, one of the top, most vulnerable Democrats who actually presented this news first. And what was interesting is the president spoke to the Senate Republicans just before this announcement was made, and he did not mention to them this was going on, despite the fact that there was a contentious discussion about immigration. So next top line, Atlas shrugged again. Check this out, David. This is pretty amazing. Ayn Rand's 1957 novel, Atlas Shrugged, is now one of the top-selling books in the country. 600,000 copies have sold since President Obama was inaugurated. This, of course, is a great libertarian classic. If you look on the Kindle list on Amazon, it is actually the #1 selling book in the fiction classics category.
That's got to warm Rand Paul's heart.
It must.
I'm sure that it must. And finally, fundraiser fail, epic fail in this scenario. Back to the optics of how the administration is handling that BP oil spill down in the Gulf Coast. Lisa Jackson, the EPA administrator, has announced her plans to cancel an appearance at a DSCC fundraiser. This is after much criticism when the invitation was sort of put out there publicly by Politico. The Republicans pounced and she crumbled and got out of this fundraiser.
As I understand, it was canceled within 2 hours of the story crossing on Politico. What an absolute disaster. Yeah. I mean, really.
It's just, they have not yet solved this issue of optics, but that's why we're going to hear from the president tomorrow at this press conference where he takes questions on this. We're going to begin with the BP news of the day. We're joined by Congressman Steve Scalise. He's a Republican of Louisiana's 1st Congressional District, and he's a Republican joining us from up on Capitol Hill. Congressman Scalise, thank you very much for being here. I guess my first question, there's no doubt the administration is getting a lot of criticism for their handling of this problem down in the Gulf Coast, down in your region of the country, sir. But the question, I guess, is what could the president actually be doing to plug this hole that he's not already doing?
Well, the first thing the president can do right now is approve the plan that our governor and our local leaders submitted more than 2 weeks ago to put a barrier plan in front of the marsh where the oil's coming in. They submitted this plan, which is the only plan that's been submitted by anybody to actually protect our marsh and our seafood beds. And in fact, we haven't gotten any word from the federal government on approving that. I called the White House last week and asked to speak with the president about this because the president today 2 weeks ago could have solved this problem and given our local leaders the tools they've asked for to actually protect our marsh, and the president has refused to act on this request, and we're angry about it.
Okay, I want to hear more about exactly what they're telling you or not telling you on this, but let's understand the plan for a moment. To sort of put this barrier in place off the coast, how long would it take to actually get that barrier built and put in place?
Well, they can marshal dredges and start actually going in some of the specific areas and getting that done fairly quickly. In fact, if 2 weeks ago they would have been given the green light to do this, you could have actually protected some of those areas of marsh that are currently getting inundated with oozing oil that's just flowing into this marsh. It's killing pelicans, it's destroying seafood beds. This was a proposal that was put on the table more than 2 weeks ago, and they've been urging the Corps of Engineers, who has to permit this, or the president, who could just say right now, let's get this done, let's roll up our sleeves and solve the problem. Instead, they're talking about doing environmental studies. I mean, they're talking about environmental studies when our environment's being destroyed.
But isn't it correct that it would take 6 months or more to actually put this barrier system in place?
No, in fact, I spoke to the parish president where they're right now getting the most impact from the oil. Billy Nungasser down in Plaquemines Parish. He talked to the Coast Guard, and they said, oh, we're concerned this might take up to a year. He said, you don't know what you're talking about. These are the people that propose this. This is the Governor's Coastal Protection Authority, and this is those people that are on the ground that understand the marsh, and they've come up with a plan that actually makes sense where they can get some areas right now that are in the most jeopardy, some protection, some actual barrier protection. Now, to get the entire coast of Louisiana, it would take some time, but the entire Louisiana coast is not where the oil's permeating today. There are specific areas where they've said, let's go get this done right now, and they've got nothing but red tape and not a word from the president where he can solve this problem right now.
Congressman, I want to turn to this top kill effort that's going on today by BP to try to get this oil to stop leaking. What is your sort of assessment of BP's operation at this point? Do they need to somehow be moved out of the way, that they have sort of exhausted their competencies at this, or no, we still need them in the lead here?
I think it's been clear from early off that BP's in over their head. You know, from day 3 when that rig went down, that's when the president, under the law, if you look at the Oil Pollution Act, which governs these spills, says that the president shall mitigate these disasters. And he's ceded all of that power to BP, but it's been clear from very early on that BP's not capable of handling this response. Now, there are other companies out there that are drilling in the Gulf that haven't had any kind of problems like this, that we could have gone out and contracted, and understand other companies are helping give discussion, but BP's been the one that's been calling the shots on the field. Really, under the law, the president's supposed to be the quarterback on the field, not the commentator in the booth.
Okay, now you're getting regular briefings on this. What's the very latest you have heard about this top kill effort, and what's your assessment? You think this is going to work? Because we can talk about barriers all we want. We can talk about cleanup, but if this oil is still pouring into the Gulf, you know, not much of it's going to do any good.
Right, and the first priority has always been to cap this well, to stop the flow from coming out of the ground. I hope and pray that this top kill works, and clearly it's one of the better plans that's been submitted, but frankly everything else that's been tried has failed, and there have been some real convoluted ideas that were thrown out there and didn't go anywhere. There's some really good ideas that have been presented by people that haven't been acted upon, so there's a lot of frustration, but in the end, the only plan that's been put forward by the local people on the ground has been rejected by the White House, and I don't understand why they're not taking the sense of urgency to say, look, I mean, the president could roll up his sleeves and say, we're not going to get off the phone until we solve this problem and get the federal permit that's blocking Louisiana from protecting our coast.
What about the dispersant that BP has been using? Are you hearing from your constituents concern about that? The EPA seems to want to muscle BP here a little bit to halt the dispersant that they're using because they fear its toxicity.
Well, you know, we've heard mixed reports on the toxicity of the dispersant. There were a lot of reports that it was working, especially if you apply it right there at the source 5,000 feet below instead of waiting until it comes up onto the surface of the water. But frankly, if that's not a plan that the EPA and the federal government thinks works, they need to start putting their own plans on the table, because just telling everybody no is not an option. They've got to have real alternatives. They haven't had any. They've just been blocking our local alternatives to stop this problem.
Congressman, we're almost out of time. Very quickly, I wanted to get your reaction to the story of the EPA administrator canceling this fundraiser for the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. What's your take on that?
Well, you know, until they're doing everything that they can to solve this problem, this has got to be an all-hands-on-deck situation. And I don't think we've seen the urgency from this administration to the problem. You know, they're talking tough, and they come down to the coast, and they talk like John Wayne, and then they go back up to D.C., and they act like Pee Wee Herman. And we're tired of it because we want to see results. We don't want to just hear rhetoric and photo ops.
Right.
We've got specific things we need done, and they're not getting done.
Congressman Steve Scalise, Republican of Louisiana, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jonathan and David. Good to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.